Sorry about that interruption. Had to make sure the volume was on. Okay, what is the Christ? For me, the Christ is the divine feminine embodiment. And instead of coming up from the ground, from the will, or from the desires, the Christ has descended from the highest realms and dimensions. And the Christ is nothing without the Christos. I come from a spiritual background that went through the Christian churches, right through to the Pentecostal, and then out into the other realms of the shamanic and the Gnostic disciplines. Trying to think of the word. And I can tell you that the Christ is the embodiment of the Sophia. Now, these syllables are significant because not only are they inlaid with spells, which is Seven Bomar's study of all the ancient texts, but they are also sound codes. So is the realm, phi is the dimensional template, and A is the spirit that washes through it. So the Sophia template needs to be reconstructed, as does the Christos template, and hence it becomes the Christo template. And I'll tell you a little bit about my journey with the Christ. The Christ for me began in my faith. When I lost the people that should have been there for me, my faith was what kept me standing. I had a direct relationship with the God of the Bible. I had accepted Christ, and I had studied the Bible intensely in my grandfather's style of cover to cover. And when I did that study on my own, without anyone giving me a direction or a guide, it's true, the Holy Spirit does speak. And what I learned as I went cover to cover through the Bible is that the intonation between new and old changes. And this is what everyone is experiencing in their reality right now. The vibrational intent between old energy and Krystic new energy is going to make a significant and permanent change to your existences. I have accepted my changes. I have been on this journey right into the physical, emotional, and mental choices that bring the Christ further into this embodiment. I've had to make sacrifices, and I've had to end relationships with loved ones that I would have had no intention of ending on my own. But I was able to step out each time because the Christ is sentient. This image behind me is not just a design of the human mind. It's an orchestration of energetic flow. And when it is in its element, meaning a pure vessel, it becomes another consciousness. And that's why I have transitioned from who I was born as into who I was revealed as, and now into who I choose to be. As Ada Christa Rose, I am owning my Christic embodiment. I am showing the entire world that the Christ is a paradigm for this dimension. And that's why I set up the website and built the platforms that I'm building. Because the Christ is looking, this is funny, the Christ is looking for a partner. As a matter of fact, it is a sentient life form that is looking to bond with every being in existence by consent. And that is where the world is at. we have just gone through a 3-year period of violation where we weren't asked, we weren't informed, and we definitely weren't upheld as the violations continued en masse. And because of that, we were pirated from our true divine inheritance. And that is what I am embodying. The divine inheritance is restoration with your highest manifestation of God Source Divine. As a twin flame, my journey took me from the one to the two to the many and finally the all. And when I got to the level of service to all as a soul, that is when the Christ began to activate. In its current embodiment, the divine feminine Krystic service template is becoming a worldwide phenomenon. And the reason for that is because every single individual being must issue their own consent. It is consent with the Christ and the Christos, or it is subjugation in their absence. Absence can make the heart grow fonder, but we are in a period of crux where, because of the last 3 years, most of the population's genetic codons cannot fire with the quantum template that restores Krystic divination. And that is a choice that whole soul groups chose as they followed their embedded and sometimes implanted templates. In this journey, I have been mainly an observer. I had to preserve my physical life, and to do that, I had to walk away from many of the relationships that, had I chosen, would have kept me in the same miasma of fear that most of the world walked into. Since I didn't take that path, I was taken on a pilgrimage into hell. I know you didn't expect that, but the journey was truly hell. It was the path of the goddess Inanna descending into her sister's realm of the underworld, and the rebirth is the embodiments that I now carry. So what is the Christ for you? The Christ is your true, essential soul, spirit self. For those of you that succumbed to the violence of the last 3 years, what I'm seeing is that the spirit body is still connected to who you are. It is still held by a silver cord close to your form, and it kind of hovers near you like a grey balloon as you go about your days. But the spirit was never grey in its original purpose. It was the blue flame. It was the breath. It was the Enoki. It was the knowing in your third eye, which is here. Whereas what's occurred in the last 3 years has transformed, either by fear or chemicals, your pituitary, which is almost adjacent to the pineal gland. Now, I can sit here and wax lyrical about chemicals and chemtrails and all the buzzwords that are out in the internet right now, but all you really need to understand is this: you always had a unique purpose. And the divine source has not given up on you in your purpose. But you must consciously desire and then take steps to reconnect. Because the Christ is bound by a service template under the law of one of consent. Whatever is done to self is done to other, and whatever is done to other is done to self. And therefore, if your disembodied spirit self is longing and hungering for an embrace of this Krystic force, then it is the self that must permit the Christ in. When we give permission for our heart's desire to become our whole desire, we basically collapse the embedded lies of what humans were told they could be. And the truth of the matter is, humans are an infinite template. We are designed to continue manifesting, to continue evolving, to continue mutating to a better incarnation. The Christ can help you do that. How do you contact the Christ? You must reach for its designer, source. In the religious fields, there are many other names attributed, and that goes into demigods and family lineages of the Anunnaki and a lot of beings that are really just out for themselves. But I guarantee that if you can sit down, concentrate on an image such as the one behind me, and then remember your deepest wish, I guarantee you that the Christ will contact you. So the Christ in the human form is coming under the masculine and the feminine templates. We're talking sacred feminine outworkings, sacred masculine constructions. And I am very fortunate to be both. I became both through a spiritual initiation that, though I did not consciously choose, I would not now have any other way, because it was the initiation of Hieros as per the Masonic rites. When it occurred, I didn't realize that it was my birthright, but at the same time it occurred, it was also mirrored and distorted. And because I had two streams of consciousness in that moment, things became very distorted for me for quite a while. But everything's leveling out now because the auspice is unity, where self and other are no longer in division or at war, where those of below have as much cadence as those of above, and those of above have as much stability as those of below. We have to accept each other for who we are, rather than complain and try to mold each other into who we aren't. And so I began this journey knowing that I had to survive. But I also began this journey with a full, complete awareness that I was a custodian of something direct from Christ. And as that direct embodiment has developed, it's become a sentient life force known as Christ. Originally, the Christ came out of the freedom teachings of Ashiana Dean, and a shout out to the freedom movement, as many of us are now being reactivated to re-embed those codes into modern life. But behind the scenes, things were just as disordered as any other family. And that's where I have to kind of settle down a little and realize that every family has divine merit. I don't have a large family. And that's given me a lot of mental freedom to redesign my beliefs, my values, and the systems that I operate on. So it's difficult for me to initially support the resistance and the holding on to fear that is so common at the moment. I don't have anyone telling me, you shouldn't do that. I don't have anyone telling me, hey, way to go, when I do either. And that was part of my initiation process, to be a soul, mind, body, spirit complex. As a twin flame, that is not an end result. That is what you call a progress state. But the Christ is an end result. The Christ is who I will always be for here on out, whether I live a few more months or whether I live for 40 more years. I don't have an Akashic history of living very long, so I feel like the burden on me to teach and share now is to leave a digital legacy. A legacy that will be changed and reshaped according to the generations to come. And this is where the Christ is not really in opposition to anything except the paradigm that there is no source. When we acknowledge a source, we put our cellular structure back into right order. We establish that our 3D physical construct is not the final template. And this was the mistake that was embraced over the last 3 years. In a trauma-induced fear state, most of the world said, this is all there is. We must preserve it. Well, we were given something that would preserve it, but the cost was what was behind it. And behind our 3D form are about 5 or 7 subtle layer bodies that inform and interact intricately with every part of this. So if you're wondering why you've never felt quite the same, it's because you have been forever changed. And the only way back to source is conscious recognition and deliberate embodiment. As I've been observing societies post-trauma of the last 3 years, I've seen that those that were most in their spiritual and mental disciplines prior are indeed holding on to their spirits most strongly post. And that's a really good endorsement for a lifestyle of meditation, reflection, and other monk-like practices. But some of us don't have space for that in our 3D lives. I know I don't. I have a reality that is something that demands almost every minute of my waking life. So to engage in anything spiritual, in anything that has a net benefit that isn't tangible, I have to deliberately make room. I have to reschedule, I have to reorganize, I have to budget in order to accommodate these new Krystic desires. And this is what you call a whole life embodiment. So allow the Christ in. Allow it to change you. Allow it to reshape you. And for those who are twin flames, get over it. They did as much as we did, and we did as much as they did. When we can truly accept that and embrace our polarized mirror soul self, then we will have our full 6-pointed Merkaba to resist. I didn't resist because I'd already gone. And for me, there was nothing in the 3D realms that needed protection apart from what the Christ had already embodied itself into. Love is not love unless it's connected to source. And you'll feel the difference in your guts, because that's where your solar plexus is, in a good way, merging with your sacral chakra. That means that your instincts are now your guiding light to your truth. And as I do, that truth wells up and I speak it. In the freedom teachings, it's called a speaker's contract, because it's something that I voluntarily took on as a soul so that I could lead others back to source. It doesn't require a following, so liking and subscribing, still optional. It doesn't even require finance, but it does take force. And I don't mean that in a precious sense. I mean it in a momentum sense. I experience the Christ burden as a clairsentient reality. You might not believe this yet, but I can actually hear all of you. And I didn't start this video today until I could hear that you were all ready to listen. So there are some days where I will just settle down for the evening and 1 or 2 souls will approach me in their eagerness to get back to source. I'm not your source. I am speaking direct from source. You could say that I'm a plug-in in this Metatronic spiral. I didn't intend to be a plug-in. My original intention was to be a organic growing development here. But things are changing for me, and it seems like the plug-in template might just be sufficient for my soul work. At any rate, after spending 7 years working with the grids of the planet and imbuing crystal energy into the ground through my own form, my crossroads now is this it? Because I can't think of any other reason to be here other than to serve the divine. And so in a realm where things have been proven to be so easily shut down if certain parties don't like them, you have to ask yourself, was there any inherent meaning to them at all? Or were we really just wasting our time? Well, the good news is there's no such thing as time. And we'll get into that in another video, because I'm a little bit weak on that because I'm not actually a wanderer. But in terms of Krystic embodiment, your source is your service. I'll say that again. Your source is your service. Your desire to serve others will get you over the line in the post-Ak era. Do we understand? You must embrace service to others, because that will lead you back to service to the all. And when you encounter all, you actually encounter your true self. You can't do it the other way around. Not like the angels of old who said, I will not serve the Most High, I will be the Most High. That is actually a form of madness. And in the Gnostic traditions, this is well documented as Sophia's personal, I'm going to call it miscreation. The miscreation of Sophia was madness. essentially a being with, as they said in Aladdin, phenomenal cosmic power, but nothing inside. And because that being could not look inside and see God's source, it went mad. And that madness has trickled down in millions of different forms into millions of different races, incarnations, inclinations, energies, you call it what you will. It all comes from an original madness that there was no God. As long as we can embrace that we have a source, and the eye of the ego, which cannot rise higher than our heart chakra, by the way, is not it, then we leave enough space, we leave enough humility to start to raise our vibration of ourselves. That's what love and light is all about. It's about raising the vibrational spin of our cellular matrix. And the ACK of the last 3 years was specifically designed to slow down your cells to a stop. And that's why the spirit body is bobbing along like a grey, sad balloon, because there is no quantum fire, as in the, I don't know what you call it, but as in the feet of a rocket ship to lift off. For the last 3 years, I've been pulling a double duty of being the all's quantum fire. And I've paid a personal price for that, such that I might not be able to do it on such a scale ever again. But I also received a great blessing from that, and that is I finally understood what it was all about. And after I'd paused and reflected on that for a while, that's when I was shown the freedom teachings. And I went through the freedom teachings of Ashiana Dean in videos on YouTube, because I don't really read that much anymore. And what I saw is so many of the clairsentient images and sounds and knowledges that I've had directly from source since I was 16 are actually a scientific body of knowledge. And because I had that correlation, I didn't have any further hesitation. And here I am embracing my speaker's contract. What I'd like to do with my contract is reconfigure the language. Because if all of us are out here saying the same words with the same intent, you're only getting part of the story. And the key to source is infinite diversity. That's what stars are for. They were to host diverse forms of conscious awareness. And so, just as an aside, to know that you are a star seed is to recognize and be in direct connection with your diverse conscious awareness. So it's unity in diversity instead of polarity in separation. I've gone through a journey, and so many of my fears have faded away. But before they faded, I had to face them. And I've spoken to some souls who embraced the ethos behind ACK because it seemed easier. It seemed like they would get out of having to face the memories, the traumas, the histories, even their own actions in lives past. It seemed like the answer, the solution. It was the apple in the garden. But the good news is, we're not all fruitarians. Those of us that didn't partake have a robust template that we can now pass on to you. And this is a template that, in the words of Jesus, greater things will ye do. Your life matters regardless of how it's measured by others. And it always will. Even when you are dust in the ground or floating around a moon as an asteroid belt, you still have value. So embrace that, my dear friends. Let that fill you up inside. Recognize that when all the chatter around you is telling you you are not, that there is a divine construct called Christos that is whispering to you, you are still. All of you are still. You just forgot again. So take time out to remember. Get steady, get quiet, get honest, and slowly tune out the external noises. A lot of us are embracing the digital realm because that's the best way to sort of grow at the moment. But that's not who we are. We are more than any of this. None of this has substance where our souls are going. None of us can comprehend what our collective consciousness has decided to do. And as I'm sitting here talking, I'm feeling a really strong inclination from the Pleiadians that yes, this is indeed what Source wants us to do. Source wants us to embrace ourselves. Give ourselves a hug. Put ourselves first. And do that when we recognize who we really are. We are the template of God Source manifest. And no amount of AI add-ons or machinery will be able to surpass that. There is one way that they rule over us, and that is by consent. Take back your consents. Rewrite your contracts. Adopt new paradigms. Direct knowledge from Source is descending on the populations now. There won't be one Tesla in another 10 years. There'll be thousands. We can all hope that the ack will fade out of existence and that the technologies therein will be rendered inert. I know there are teams off-world and on that are working hard on that. And that's largely what our work on the grids was for, to enable the ack to be hacked. So as a system disruptor that was most recently placed on Jupiter, of course I put up my hand. I mean, who wouldn't? It's one of the best things we've ever seen, a world freeing itself rather than having an off-world unit assist. I know we can do this. And if you guys bring me your questions, I can channel your answers and create videos with that content. In the meantime, I'll just be following my own agenda and putting out the things that I think need to be broken down a bit further. But I'm really feeling strongly in the back of my brain to adopt the Christ. Reject the insane construct. The one that does not acknowledge Source is the one that is without it. It is you who is embodied, not Sophia, but you. And when your Christ Lotus is in play. It is your higher self that can finally join this game. I'm just one. Ada Krista Rose was a priestess. And due to the initiations that I underwent in this life, I am now a high priestess. And the high is not a privilege, it is a responsibility. And my responsibility is to maintain the elevations of the Christ. And so those who know me will know that I won't stand for a lot of stuff these days. And that's okay if that means that our friendships are done, because we are diverging. There is a Krystic spiral and there is an AI-derived Metatronic spiral that are very slowly going to pass each other for good. It's the what is good for you is also good for all. And you must get to that level of awareness, that acceptance that your value isn't an exception to your life. It should be your life. And that's why I can embrace other, and why I've become a far stronger and far fiery self. Because there's not a shred of being in me that would desire to end life. Not mine and not others. And that is a learning that I have grown into over what could be almost 1,000,000 years. I've had a journey that, from my initial conscious awakening in 2014, took me right back to the beginning of time, where I saw the first atrocities. I saw the first divisions, and I saw how hard I fought both sides of me, masculine and feminine. But we have to no longer fight. We have to surrender that part of us, because if anyone would like to read The Prism of Lyra, this is just one more theater of opposites. That is really the purpose of the dual existence, to maintain opposites instead of embracing unity. Because when we embrace unity, we have a combined quantum. And 7 years ago, when my quantum combined with the Christ, and I'd like to think the Christos, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, when my quantum combined with the Christ in a rite known as Hieros Gamos, which is the union of the inner masculine and the inner feminine, I was never going to be the same. Suddenly I could see what I'd been blind to for that first 30 years. And that's that the battle doesn't really matter. It's not really important who's right, who wins, who receives. It's important who grows. Because whether it's this lifetime or the next, we are all accountable to Source. And the first angels that defied the Most High knew this. And they knew this, and they continued in their discretions and digressions. We must pedal back from that as a race, because where they go, angels fear to tread. It's not even a choice between embodiments. In the grand scheme of now, even the embodiment isn't critical. What is critical is the overlay of the Krystic self. In my journey, I didn't have a self to begin with. I came from a background that was strategically designed to rip all self away from me. And in my young adulthood, I faithfully upheld those patterns of my own accord, and I fragmented even further. My journey has taken me through, not surprisingly, mental health, but also social health, social cohesion, and out into the future of what can we do now that we're free. Freedom has been established once again, and the only part of you that is not free is the part that isn't running the Krist. So embrace it. Use my platforms, onlinereadings.com.au. Build your own. Perhaps we could work together one day as a cooperative. My dream is bigger than profit. My dream has been a world that is unified in its intent for service. And the service is to the Most High. And we are not it until it has consent to become we. So I hope that was a little bit clearer. The channels are usually quite direct and fast. And again, like other channelers before me, it is an art to develop language to fit the downloads that are coming in. Even now, I feel like the Pleiadians have a lot more to say. I would encourage you all to look at Daniel Scranton's work, because he is a direct channel, and I'm starting to feel in my spirit that the Pleiadians would like to walk with more of their ground crew than what they've been able to thus far. That there is a massive boots on the ground collective. It's time, guys. Put down your sillies. Put on your armor and re-embrace your own Krist. I'm speaking now to the Avian collective, the ones who were the initial angels guarding the gates. It's our time now. The lions are back, and we are ready to embrace our destinies. Once upon a time, lions fought birds, fought snakes, fought reptiles, and these are all archetypes of states of mind, where there was really only ever divine mind, and all states were an aberration. So I hope you can remember that there is a divine source. It is sentient, no AI required, and it is desirous of consent with self. Well, I hope you enjoyed that first chat. I've got a lot more to say. I'd love to get your guidance on what you'd like to hear. So find me on Facebook, Ada Krista Rose. Instagram's a little bit behind because I'm not really a selfie person, as you can tell. So just remember the Krist, guys. Remember this symbol. Remember that you have a place in it, that we all have a role in it, and that a speaker's contract is just another choice. It's a choice to live out the Krist. Namaste, galactic friends. Yama.